right, as you can see, I got a lot of freaking meat in front of me, and that's what I want to talk about in this video. I want to talk about meat. I want to talk about why I source local, why I think it's very important to source local, and why I love to do so. So let's dive right in. As a 6-year carnivore, and my dog is also a 6-year carnivore, collectively we both eat quite a bit of meat. And that's why I have so much meat in front of me, because my reserves were getting kind of low. I like to have meat in there so I'm prepared for whatever happens. So I buy my meat from my local producer. The name of the butcher shop I buy my meat from is Boone's Butcher Shop. They're out of Bardstown, Kentucky. They have the most amazing deals that I've seen pretty much across the country. And the reason for that is because they have a very loyal customer base. There's people that come from miles around to go shop there, including me, because I drive over an hour to get there. And because they have so much business, they're able to pass their success down to the consumer. Therefore, I get amazing deals on my meat. So the ground beef I have right here, $4.59 a pound. The chicken, this was actually on sale. I got chicken leg quarters. Me and my dogs share these, all right, because I've gotten into eating chicken. I went like over 4 years without eating chicken. I started reintroducing it back in 2024. Found out I actually do pretty well with it. I enjoy chicken, so here we go, 99 cents a pound. I've got chicken gizzards here, $1.59 a pound. Beef fat trimmings, this is my favorite way to get beef fat. In my opinion, it beats beef suet, it beats tallow, it beats all that stuff. Beef fat trimming is the way to go, $3.29 a pound. I do have some beef suet back here too, because I like making tallow. And $1.89 a pound. And I got some pork chops, because that's another thing I started reintroducing in 2024. And I do enjoy pork. This is all American stuff here. This is not imported. We're going to get into that in a second. But my pork is $2.19 a pound. All right, so I did the math on all this. I got all this, 100 pounds of meat for $245. All right, so that's an average of $2.45 a pound. Show me any other food in the grocery store that you can get nutrient for nutrient, pound for pound, ounce for ounce, that cheap. $2.45 a pound. And I did some videos about that, so if you think you can, I could probably prove you wrong. All right, because if you're going to say vegetables or something like that, pound for pound, nutrient for nutrient, vegetables are way more expensive than this. So the reason I like doing this is because let's just talk about the beef industry and the meat packing industry. If you're not familiar with this, the meat in grocery stores, over 80% of it, even if it says grass-fed organic, even if it says USDA, even if it says product of the United States, over 80% of the beef on grocery store shelves is imported from a foreign country. All right. And the reason they get away with that is because of the Country of Origin Labeling Act. It was repealed. Okay. So that means that it is not required for you to go in the grocery store and for them to put a country of origin on the packaging. It's voluntary only. So you might say, okay, well, how does it say USDA? Or how does it say product of the United States if it actually isn't from the United States? It's a great question. The way they get away with it is because they import the meat, and it could be like whole animals, it could be carcasses, it could be, cut up meat that has to be processed down once it gets here. And what they do is they process it through one of the big 4 meat packers, JBS, Cargill, Tyson, and National Beef Packing Company. It gets processed through there, and because it's processed in the United States, even if the cow has never stepped foot on American soil or has never breathed breath in America, they can say it's a product of the United States just because it was processed in a U.S.-based facility. Now, keep in mind that they're U.S.-based facilities, but 2 of those, JBS and National Beef, are actually Brazilian owned. Okay, so what happens is you're buying meat from a foreign country, you're not supporting your local farmers, and then your money is actually leaving the local economy again, because you're actually paying 2 of the big 4 meat packers that are based out of Brazil. And if you're buying pork, if you're buying Smithfield pork, in particular, your money's going straight to China. Another issue with imported meat is that the farms overseas do not require on-farm inspections. All right, so even if the meat says grass-fed, organic, grass-finished beef, we have no oversight on that. We do not know how those animals are raised because they do not require on-farm inspections. So that means that those animals overseas could be spending their entire lives in feedlots or even in a barn and never even stepping foot on pasture. As long as it was eating grass, aka hay or haylage, they can label it as grass-fed, grass-finished. So that's a humongous problem. We have no oversight whatsoever on how the animals were raised, and we just basically go by the packaging, the buzzwords on the packaging. So by buying your food from a local producer, you do away with all that because you have direct oversight on where your food comes from. You can literally walk out into the field with the cows and probably in some places go out there and pick out the cow you want and have that cow in your freezer. You don't have to worry about on-farm inspections because you can do your own. You can see where the animals come from. You can see how they were raised. You can see who takes care of them, and you can meet the people that take care of the food that you buy. And to me, that is very, very important because I love to have oversight of my food. And as somebody who provides a lot of food for myself, I know how hard this is. There's a lot of work that goes into it. It is not an easy task. So I like to be able to shake these people's hand, look them in the eye, and thank them for putting food on my table. So our American farmers, our local farmers need us really bad, okay? Over the last 5 years, there's been over 140,000 farm closures. Over the last couple decades, there have been millions of local family-owned farm closures. All right, the average age of farmers nowadays, they're actually coming up to the age of retirement. So what's going to happen is once these farmers retire, that land is going to go up for sale or auction. And, you know, the younger generation, they don't really have a very large interest in farming for the most part. And the ones that do, they can't afford the farmland. So what's going to happen is this is going to be a humongous land transfer, like one of the largest land transfers that we've seen in recent history. And if Americans don't keep hold of that farmland, and if it goes like up for auction, or let's say a private investor or a foreign country comes in and buys it or something like that, we lose that farmland forever. We lose that resource forever. We lose that food forever. So the more farms we lose, the more reliant we become on big food. And the problem with that is that big food is toxic. All the stuff that they produce for us is full of a bunch of hyper-processed, toxic ingredients. The stuff that's grown in soil is grown in nutrient-depleted soil, so they inundate it with synthetic fertilizers, and then they spray pesticides and herbicides on there. Even if it's meat that we're talking about, they use vaccines in a lot of meat now. They have very shady practices. A lot of the meat that you find on grocery store shelves, they actually inject the packaging with carbon monoxide to give the meat a very red color because, again, it's imported from a foreign country, so it's going to be sitting on the shelf for a very long time. So to make sure it doesn't turn brown and to make sure that the consumer still buys it, they put carbon monoxide in the packaging. They also use food dyes and a lot of the feed additives for chicken, for fish, for chickens, for the eggs. Things like canthaxanthin, they put that in there. They put, you know, and that more or less just, it's a food dye is what it is. And that is actually linked to blindness in human beings, okay? Like if humans consume too much of that, it'll cause you to go blind. And they're feeding that to the chickens. They're feeding that to the fish, and we're eating that, okay? So buying local, I love this for a myriad of reasons, as you can tell, because it keeps our money in our local economy. It makes sure that I'm getting the highest quality food I can possibly get for, again, the cheapest price. And it's, like I said, very, very cheap. $2.49 on average, or $2.45 a pound, an average for this humongous spread for 100 pounds of meat. And this is going to last me and my dog for a very long time. Okay, because I also hunt and I source a lot of the meat myself. So between that and this, I mean, you're talking months of food right here for $245. Months of food. And another great thing about sourcing local is you have so much variety. Okay, people complain about eating meat's boring, carnivore's boring, there's no like variation and stuff in there. when you factor in all the animal foods that you can actually get from a single animal, there's actually quite a bit here. So I've got beef fat trimmings, I've got beef suet. I could have very easily have bought testicles if you like that kind of stuff. Not a lot of people do. I personally do, actually. I could have bought liver, I could have bought heart, I could have bought oxtail, I could have bought ribs, I could have bought like dozens of different cuts of meat. And those can all be cooked different ways. And that adds a lot of variety in there. I've got all these different animals in here. A lot of variety. This can all be cooked different ways. I did a video not too long ago about making carnivore hot pockets, where you essentially grind up chicken and you put pretty much whatever kind of meat you want in there, but you can put like cheese in there, you can put ground beef, all kinds of different stuff in this hot pocket, essentially. Fold it up, throw it in the air fryer, and you got this humongous calzone looking thing of goodness. And that's an amazing thing. You can make carnivore pizza if you like that kind of stuff. But you don't have to get fancy. You can just eat meat. Like, I just throw this stuff on the grill and I go on with my day because that's what I enjoy. There's nothing more appealing to me than cooking meat over an open fire. So that's what I'm probably going to do tonight, actually, with a lot of this stuff. But I bring this home, I package it up myself. I put it in like 1 pound packages, put it in the freezer. And this will last me and my dog for a very long time. I pull it out as I need it. It's very simple. I'm in and out of the kitchen in 5 minutes. Buying local is the way to go. We're not putting our money into these giant corporations that are owned by BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. Because the only thing these giant corporations do, they try to please their shareholders because they're the ones getting all the money. They're the ones that have a large say in a lot of these companies. And that means that they often manipulate the consumer and provide the consumer with the lowest quality food that they possibly can, so they increase their profit. And that's what it's all about. When you buy local, they don't have the ability to do that because a lot of times, their customer base is pretty small. So sometimes their prices are going to be higher because of that, but they're not, they can't cut corners and be like, oh, we're just going to cut corners and make this food cheaper or cheaper quality, because the consumers will leave and they'll just go back to eating all the crap for big industry, the stuff we're trying to get away from. So what I've seen all across the country, because I've traveled a lot over the years, all over the country, all over the world, and I see this all over the place, is that when you have a butcher shop, when you have a farm, a local producer that's like mine, the one in my area, and they have a loyal customer base, the larger that customer base goes or gets, the lower they can lower their prices because they're able to, because they're getting more profit. They have more business. So they're able to pass their success on to the consumer. And that's what I've seen time and time again. And that's definitely the case for my local producer. I mean, this is, what are we in? February of 2025. And I just got all this meat for an average $2.45 a pound. At a time where meat is supposed to be extremely expensive. And it is for the most part. But there are ways that you can make it cheap. It does not have to break the bank every time you go buy meat. All right? So that's why I like shopping local. That's why I go out of my way and drive over an hour to my local producer because of this stuff right here, because of everything I just talked about. And I do buy from big industry occasionally. I think it's inevitable for all of us to have to do that from time to time, but I mitigate it. I make it as infrequent as possible, and I try to source as much of my food as I can from my local producer who sources it from my local community. They source it from my local farms, and they source it from hardworking Americans just like us. So if you're looking for a place to source your meat and you've struck out in your area, I have a farm map on my website. I will link that below, and I pretty much link that in the description of every single one of my videos. It's 100% free to use. There are over 7,200 local farms, butcher shops, and resources on that map. Please use that. That's what I made it for. It took me over a year to make that. All right, I touched every single website that is on that farm map and added every single one by hand, manually. So far, I think there's been over like 40 or 50,000 people use this thing. Jump in there, get a hold of your local producers, see what kind of deals you can get. Let's keep our money in our local economies, and let's make sure that everybody has access to the highest quality nutrition that we could possibly get.